Hi Facebook, I'm Libby Cunningham with WCPO.com, joined here with reporter Tom McKee, and we are entering hour 9 of jury deliberations in the retrial of the former University of Cincinnati police officer Ray Tenzing. And we're giving you a little update here on Facebook. We talked to you a couple of hours ago. We don't have a verdict or anything yet, but we'd love for you to ask us any questions that you might have here in the comments. I have a computer right here, so we'll be able to take a look at them and see what you want to know and if we can help answer that for you. So Tom, what updates do we have now, if any?
Well, there's really been only one update. That was 11:45. We had the jury call and say they had a question. Now, Judge Leslie Gibbs yesterday said if there were questions, she would first go over those questions with the attorneys in chambers, which is what she did, and if they would rise to the level of being needed to be addressed in court, they would do that. But it didn't go into open court, so obviously they were able to handle it internally.
And I think that when we had gone down to possibly get into the courtroom, they said that it had something to do with evidence. But we weren't sure anything past that.
Well, they've got the statements and testimony of more than 20 witnesses and more than 25 exhibits and pictures to go through. So it could be about any of those things. I don't think it was about the video from the body camera Ray Tenzing was wearing. It could be about any other picture. You never know what might be something they're looking at right now.
About. And so we're in now, sorry guys, we are in the 9th hour of jury deliberations. And I know a lot of people had asked before, in the last trial we deliberated for about 25 hours. Ended up with the mistrial on a Saturday morning.
Correct.
Is there any indication of how long it could be this time around?
There's no indication whatsoever. The only people that know that are the 12 jurors in the jury room. There's no tipping of the hand. We don't have any insight, any windows into what's going on in that room whatsoever. The bailiff for the court is the only person, the liaison between the judge. The judge doesn't even have contact with the jurors. Unless they come into the courtroom, she gives instructions, but otherwise it's the bailiff who gets them food, makes sure they're comfortable, makes sure they have what they need, and then relays questions if they come up. So there's no way of knowing how long it could be, days, weeks. We were talking earlier, and the Bill Cosby jury in Pennsylvania over the weekend deliberated for 52 hours before deciding they couldn't reach a verdict, and that was a hung jury too and a mistrial.
52 hours is a very long time. That would have been double what they had said. And so I see a couple of you commenting here about not being able to hear us. We'll try to be a little bit louder.
Okay.
We went to a room. So someone asked, are these not the same charges as before that the defendant is facing? They
are the same charges. There was the hung jury on the murder and voluntary manslaughter. Based on conversations that Joe Dieters and the prosecutorial team had with some of the jurors in that first trial, not all of them spoke to the prosecutor, but they decided they had a strong enough case to go forward with those same charges the second time, murder and voluntary manslaughter. That was based, again, on conversations with the jurors. And you may recall that there was considerable sentiment toward one or the other of those charges, but they couldn't get that unanimous 12-person verdict that is required under law for a conviction. Now, there was concern about possibly putting reckless homicide in this, and it was injected into the arguments in this case. But Judge Gibbs said, I've seen no evidence of reckless homicide evidence being introduced. She did not allow it. We thought it might come during jury instructions. Didn't happen then either.
And the jurors don't know the prosecution had asked for those charges to be considered.
That's correct. They have no knowledge of that whatsoever. That was done, that hearing was done in open court, but without the jury there.
And so there are 2 charges that Ray Tenzing is facing, but as I seem to remember something we talked about earlier, and Stacey DeGraffenreid, said in her closing statements, is that although there are charges of murder and voluntary manslaughter, you can't consider voluntary manslaughter until you've decided that murder doesn't fit.
That's correct.
To go. So how exactly does that work?
Well, on the table right now, it has to be murder. They have to have 12 jurors sign a form saying, yes, he's guilty of murder. If he's guilty of murder, then what we have is the trial over. If they determine he's not guilty of that particular charge, what we have is then they can move on to the voluntary manslaughter charge. They have to decide guilt or innocence on that. They have 4 forms in the jury room: guilt or innocence of murder, guilt or innocence of voluntary manslaughter. If they can't agree on that, we have what we had before, which could conceivably be a hung jury and a mistrial.
If there is a mistrial, could the prosecution try Ray Tanzanick again for another trial?
Certainly they could be. The double jeopardy standard would not be appropriate in that point because he's not convicted of anything. You got to take a look at the Ryan Widmer case up in Warren County. Ryan Widmer, 1, 2, 3, trial, was there a fourth or third? Just a third.
I think a third.
But a third trial for that. They went back and they went back and they went back and they got the conviction on that last attempt. Would the prosecutor's office do that? Would they re-indict on a lesser charge? Would they let the whole thing go? No way of knowing at this point.
Does Judge Giz have any power if the jury is a hung jury or if it mistrials? Does she have any power to drop the charges completely against the defendant?
I'm not a lawyer. What I've heard, though, some lawyers tell me is there is something called Rule 29 that she could dismiss the charges, but I don't know all the details of how that would specifically work.
And I just went downstairs to see if there were any demonstrators. There had been some demonstrators earlier. I spoke to a woman with the NAACP who said that she had been here for the last trial as well, but it seems pretty calm, very calm outside of the courthouse right now.
Well, they had the Peace March last night. It was around the courthouse a couple of times. They've done that several times, and it was absolutely peaceful, hardly even a sound being made. Yes, there was a gentleman with a bullhorn out front speaking, but not in a loud or boisterous way. He was just making some points, but the crowd that circled the courthouse was absolutely calm and collected and very well-mannered.
And do we know if the Cincinnati Police Department has any extra security since we are in deliberations now downtown? I remember that during the first trial they had some step up in security.
We aren't going to know that for sure, but what I can tell you is they did have lots of bicycle patrols around the courthouse last time. We saw them last night, we saw them today. So yes, they're out in force and they have a plan to handle any kind of situation for any kind of verdict whatsoever.
Absolutely. I'm trying to see right here any questions that any of you have here on Facebook. We're seeing here, I hope the sound has gotten better for some of you. I know that you had said that that had been an issue. Is this something, too, we had been asked in the last Facebook Live, if there is a conviction, is the defense able to appeal at all?
Certainly, any conviction can be appealed. It's their constitutional right to be able to appeal. I would assume that Stu Matthews has kept a note going on of objections he's made that were overruled. That would be possibly appealable points if that ever came to that.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us here on Facebook Live. We will let you know if there are any updates to this case throughout the day. The jurors will be done, if they don't come to a verdict today, deliberating around 4 p.m. and sequestered, kept overnight. And so if we don't have a verdict, you can catch any of new information we have on any of our newscasts, and we'll come back here on Facebook Live tomorrow.
Correct.
Thank you.